Hello everyone, welcome back to 828 with Cait. I'm your host, Cait Taylor, and this week I turned 28 years old. I saw this really fun idea from Ali Abdaal on YouTube where he shared 28 life lessons from 28 years, and I just thought that would be a really fun idea to do on the podcast. So I'm going to jump in on this and share some of my life lessons with you too. Number 1, the older you get, the more you will probably like yourself. I always used to say that I wanted to stay 21 forever. Now I can't think of anything worse, knowing what I was like as a 21-year-old. Each year I have grown, improved, and know myself more as a person. Every year you will make mistakes and learn from them, hopefully. You will figure out how to dress a little bit better, how to do and not do your makeup, and ultimately figure out what you do and don't want out of life. Number 2, you cannot change other people, no matter how hard you try. You might really want your parents to start eating healthier, or your partner to go to therapy, or your best friend to accept Jesus. And you can encourage them to do so. But as soon as you start feeling like it's your responsibility to get them there, or even believing that it's within your power to do so, that is a recipe for disappointment. The only thing you control is yourself. You can pray for God to move in that person's life and in their heart, but ultimately, people are going to do what they want to do. Accepting this is the key to fostering healthy relationships and preserving your own well-being. If this is something you struggle with, it's definitely something I struggle with, look into the Mel Robbins Let Them theory. I believe she has a whole podcast episode on this, but she said the idea is if you let people do what they want to do, they will reveal who they truly are. And when they reveal to you who they truly are, you now know what you can choose next that's right for you. Number 3, only take advice from people who you would want to switch places with. If you are having relationship troubles, it's probably not a good idea to ask your divorced parents what you should do, unless they're advising you on what you should not do. Sometimes people who have attempted and failed at something can still have great advice as far as what to avoid, but I would seek out people who have obtained what you want to obtain. Find the couple who have been happily married for 50 years and ask them their secrets. Find a mentor who has already successfully built a profitable business. If that person is already at the top of the mountain, they are qualified to give you pointers on how you can get there too. Number 4, improve your financial literacy. Learn how to budget, build an emergency fund, learn to use credit cards responsibly, figure out how to create wealth, and ultimately how to think about money differently. Because if you are anything like me, everything you learned about money growing up was either wrong or unhelpful. And they are not teaching us what we should know when we're in school. I did take a 2-week budgeting course when I was 17 that my church hosted, which thankfully laid a good foundation at that point, but I still made a lot of money mistakes. So if I could go back, I would be proactive about reading books and just improving my financial literacy so that I would know these next couple of tips. Number 5, avoid lifestyle creep. This is the habit of spending more money as you make more money. You get a pay rise, and instead of taking that extra money and saving or investing it, you spend it. You get a bigger apartment, you buy a new fancy car. So your income is increasing, but so are all of your expenses. If you are in this habit, it does not matter if you make $20,000 a year or $200,000 a year. If everything you make, you spend, you will always be broke. Number 6, invest in the stock market as early as possible. I learned this in my mid-20s, and I wish I had learned it as a teenager, because there is nothing like the power of compound interest over time. The 2 main books I read to learn about this are called The Simple Path to Wealth and Girls That Invest. These books will show you that anyone can invest, and it is incredibly easy when you invest in low-cost index funds. This is what most wealthy investors are doing. They are not taking a gamble, picking random individual stocks, or doing risky day trading like you see people advertising on Instagram. They are investing in funds like the S&P 500, which is basically like owning a little piece of America's top 500 companies. This is the method that Warren Buffett himself recommends, and you do not need a lot of money to get started. After I had paid off my debt and built an emergency fund, which are the 2 first things you should do, I opened my investment account with $100, and I just put a little tiny bit in anytime I can afford to. You can just set it, forget it, and let your money grow. I do want to give a disclaimer that this is not financial advice. This is just what I did. Please do your own research. Number 7, little by little, a little becomes a lot. This is an African proverb that I love. It actually applies to what I just said about investing and compound interest, but it also applies to just about everything else in life. Do not underestimate the power of your small, everyday efforts and how they accumulate over time. For example, I personally wanted to read the entire Bible, but I started out by just reading 1 chapter every single day. So think about something you want to achieve, and then think of 1 small step you can take today that will move you towards that goal, and then do it again tomorrow. Following on from that, number 8 is to make your goals actionable. Instead of saying it's your goal to make $10,000 a month, make it your goal to create X amount of products. Instead of saying it's your goal to have 1 million followers, make it your goal to create 1 piece of content every day. Because we really don't have any control over the result, but we do have control over our actions. You will feel much more accomplished when you are able to check off each of those actions instead of just looking wishfully at this big lofty goal that you really have no control over. Number 9, stop saying, when I have this, then I'll be happy. I recently heard Annie F. Downs on her podcast say, not long after I have breakfast, I want lunch. And I thought this was funny because she was describing how we as humans perpetually want more and more. You wanted a partner, you got one, now you want a house. You got the house, now you want kids. You wanted a job that pays well, but you got it, and now you want a job that pays more. And you keep on saying, I'll be happy when. But at what point do you stop and just be content with what you have? The Apostle Paul in the Bible wrote from prison saying, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Which brings me to number 10. Gratitude is the antidote for most things. Whenever you are feeling anxious, depressed, having negative thoughts about your life or about yourself, gratitude is what will bring you back into the present moment. Stop and remember that there is at least one answered prayer that you are currently living in. And there is also something in your life that someone else is currently praying for. Number 11, losing balance is part of living a balanced life. Another way of saying this is that you can have everything, but you can't have everything all at once. If you want to build a business, other things will have to fall by the wayside while you build it. Don't get fixated on every area having to be balanced at all times. Work, socializing, family, life just does not work that way. Also, having a routine is great, but sometimes it's worth veering off course just for a day. Sometimes staying up late to hang out with your friends, even if it means you have to skip the gym in the morning, can create the little moments that make life worth living. Number 12, traveling in your 20s is one of the best things you can do while you have limited responsibilities and a whole lot of freedom. If that is a path you feel drawn to, I highly recommend it. I stayed in 4 different countries and 3 different US states during my 20s. I was broke the entire time. I applied for an au pair program, which paid pennies, but I got free accommodation, free food, and got to experience living in places I had dreamt of. It grew my confidence exponentially, broadened my worldview, and gave me some of the greatest friends and memories of my life. Number 13. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger usually masks deeper emotions such as fear, hurt, or betrayal. I often think of this picture of an iceberg, which if you're listening just to the audio of this podcast, you can Google this anger iceberg. But anger is the tip of the iceberg. It's the emotion you see on the surface, but under the water are all of the underlying emotions that are beneath the anger. It takes self-awareness and emotional intelligence to sit with your anger until you find what the real root emotion is, and then you can heal it. There is a C.S. Lewis quote that says, "I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was grief." Number 14, don't be afraid to try lots of things. I left school when I was 16, convinced I was going to become a celebrity makeup artist. I worked for a year managing a makeup shop before realizing that I really didn't love it as much as I thought I would. I then worked countless other jobs, throwing myself into wedding photography, marketing, and now eventually ministry, which is the thing that has resonated most with me. I have never felt embarrassed about changing course because if you never try, you will never know. There is so much pressure on kids, 18-year-olds, to figure out exactly what their thing is and pick a career path for the next 40 years, despite the fact that your prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until age 25. That's the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking, planning, and making good decisions. It's an almost impossible task for a young adult to decide their life path right off the bat. So my advice would be to try lots of things until you figure it out. And also, your thing might change many times throughout your life as you evolve, and that's okay. You don't have to stay in a box that you put yourself in. Number 15, speaking of boxes, the thing holding you back the most is not your external circumstances, it's your own limiting beliefs. It's like Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Everyone has limiting beliefs that have usually been imposed upon us by other people. If you grew up hearing that your family never has any money, then chances are you subconsciously have accepted that. Maybe a teacher at school told you you are terrible at maths, and so ever since you have believed that you can't do maths. I was once told that it would take between 6 to 12 months in order to get my GED because I didn't finish high school. And I ended up sitting and passing all of the exams in less than a week. I shocked myself by what I was capable of when I just started believing that I could. Mindset is everything. So work on identifying and letting go of your limiting beliefs and also getting out of victim mentality. Number 16 is go for walks. I very recently started walking between 7,000 and 10,000 steps every day, which is a huge jump for me because I work from home. And at first I didn't realize just how much it was positively impacting me until I missed a few days. I immediately noticed that my mental health was not as good as on the days when I had been walking. So I looked into this and I found something really interesting. There is a form of therapy I have been doing for the past year. It's called EMDR therapy. I do it every single week. It's to help me recover from post-traumatic stress, and it involves looking at a light that moves back and forth while recalling traumatic memories, and it's meant to help you reprocess these traumatic memories. And I learned that this process was actually discovered by the founder while she was taking a walk in the woods. It says here, walking is a simple form of bilateral stimulation, stimulating the right and left hemispheres of the brain, which in turn facilitates emotional processing. I believe it works, and that walking is just as beneficial for your mental health as it is physical. It's a great time to think, to process emotions, listen to a podcast, listen to this podcast, get vitamin D. Just trust me, go for a walk if that's something you're able to do. Number 17, you don't have to be fully healed to be in a relationship. I hear the opposite of this all the time. That you must be fully healed, you must fully love yourself before getting into a relationship. And quite frankly, I think that's bad advice. For a lot of us, our traumas happened within relationships, and they need to be healed within relationships. For me personally, after years of therapy in my solo healing journey, it started to feel like I didn't have much else to work on. And I am a fairly traumatized person, but it was just because there was no one there to trigger me. When you are single, you can feel like you are fixed, like you have everything together, and the second you get into a relationship, you will realize all of the stuff that is still unhealed. Being that close to another person is like having a magnifying mirror. It's very revealing. Stuff is going to start popping up that you didn't even realize was there. So what's most important is finding a partnership that is safe to heal within. Finding a partner who wants to heal with you and who is willing to do the work necessary. In a healthy relationship, both people are all in and they help each other to become better. Number 18. What would you do if you knew you would fail? I heard this said by Seth Godin It's a twist on the original quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, where she asked, "What would we accomplish if we knew we couldn't fail?" But I actually like Seth Godin's version better. Ask yourself what you would do if you knew you would definitely fail. What is the thing that stirs your heart and passion so much that you would still want to do it even if failure was inevitable? If you would wake up every morning with the desire to write, even knowing that you will never ever publish a book, that is what you truly love to do. If you would still make music knowing that no one else would ever listen to it, then music is your thing. Number 19. Neuroplasticity is the most underrated feature of your nervous system. Scientists used to believe that the brain was fixed and it could not be changed, but we now know that this is not true. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's lifelong capacity to change and rewire itself. You can create new neural pathways in your brain. This is life-changing news for people like myself, because the unhealthy thought patterns that were learned in childhood can be unlearned. We are able to create happier, healthier brains. If you would like to learn more about this, look up Dr. Caroline Leaf. She is a Christian neuroscientist, and she has a whole host of resources that can help you. Number 20, rest is productive. This is something I still struggle with, especially working from home. It's really hard sometimes to draw a line between working and downtime, but I'm learning that slowing down can actually help you get more done. You can be more efficient and more creative after giving yourself time to rest and recuperate. There is a reason why God tells us we should always have a day of rest. So I have made a habit of always having a Sabbath day each week. To me, it's also an act of trusting God. It's believing that He can do more in 6 days than I can do in 7. It's trusting in His provision and that He is ultimately the one in control. Number 21, the people you surround yourself with will rub off on you, whether you realize it or not, and it's often a slow progression. The Bible says, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." This has been scientifically studied that who we spend our time with influences our mindset, choices, and behavior. So strive to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who are closer to God than you, who have more successful relationships. Those are the types of people that you want to be rubbing off on you. Number 22, take care of your inner child. There is a young part of you that still exists on the inside of you, but most of us are very disconnected from it. I suggest finding photos of yourself when you were a kid, or writing a letter even to that younger part of you. For me, imagining my inner child helps me to be kinder to myself. When I am having a bad mental health day, I will take care of myself like I'm taking care of a small child. That young 5-year-old little girl deserves to take a shower and feel clean, even if I don't feel like doing it. When I'm feeling depressed, I don't really want to eat, but she deserves to have something to eat. So I will make something specifically that little me would have loved, which is usually a bowl of baked beans. Recognize that you are now the adult that you always needed. You can take care of yourself now. Number 23, if you want to achieve something great, don't think in years, think in decades. This is a commonality among many visionaries such as Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson. They all leveraged decade thinking. Walt Disney envisioned Disneyland's trajectory long before it became a reality. There's a quote that says, "Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade." Number 24, learn to study the Bible. If you want to know God's will, you want to know your purpose, why are you here, what's the meaning of life, maybe you want to find comfort for your difficult days, it's all in there. It's the ultimate guide for your life. If you only take one of these life lessons and apply it, let it be this one. Number 25, health is wealth. If your health deteriorates, you will very quickly no longer care about anything else. You do not realize how valuable your health is until you get sick. Every day that you wake up and you and everyone in your family is well and healthy is a great day. Never ever take that for granted. Number 26, if you are outside of God's will, you will never have peace. I have made several choices over the years that I knew were not God's best for me or not within His will, and I learned the hard way that God will never give you peace in a situation that He didn't mean for you to settle in. He cares far too much about you. So the Holy Spirit will constantly convict you. And in my experience, He will make it so uncomfortable to the point where you feel you just have to get yourself out of that situation. And I will say, it does not matter how badly you want something. If it means that God's peace will be removed from you, you will not want it much longer. Number 27, feel the fear and do it anyway. The best things in my life were all on the other side of something that absolutely terrified me. But it's rare that we can ever get that feeling of fear to just go away. It's much more likely that we will have to adopt this mindset of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. What helps me is remembering that fear is not from God. It's often a tool used by the enemy because he wants to keep you from everything good that God has planned for your life. When you recognize where and who that fear is coming from, that will frustrate you enough that you will be able to push through the fear. And finally, number 28, keep your eyes fixed on your own path. Everyone's timeline is different. God has a different journey mapped out for every individual person. Don't get caught up looking around thinking, that person got married before I did, they bought a house before me. It doesn't matter. Maybe your path is more like mine and you did everything unconventional. You left a traditional job to move back home and pursue your dream. I have never cared what people think about my life because no one else has to live it except me. And you also can't be behind in life because your life is only yours. I hope some of these life lessons were helpful. I would also love to hear some of yours, so please leave them in the comments if you have any to share, and then we can all read them. I'm also going to leave a link to Ali Abdaal's video in the description box, along with all the resources that I mentioned. I hope you all have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you're tuning in. Until next time, God bless you guys.